Presidential frontrunners have already paid their way into your living room with advertisements for the 2008 election.
But what about those candidates who don't have enough money to buy ads?
We've seen his name posted all over the city of Mobile, and some signs ask the question, who is Ron Paul?
Paul is an underdog in an already crowded field.
Ron Paul is trailing badly in the polls.
His poll numbers lag behind a field dominated by Giuliani, Romney, and Thompson.
He hasn't broken 2% in national polls. He's tied for dead last in the Republican field.
What's success for you in this campaign?
What's success? Well, to win is one is the goal.
That's not going to happen.
I'm Ron Paul. I'm a congressman from Texas, serving in my 10th term. I am the champion of the Constitution.
Almost every single problem that we're facing today has come about because we haven't been a stickler for the rule of law. We haven't followed the Constitution, and that's what we ought to be doing.
I'm suggesting very strongly that we should have a foreign policy of non-intervention, the traditional American foreign policy and the Republican foreign policy.
But the policy of non-intervention is the policy of the Founding Fathers. It's the policy of the Constitution.
It goes without saying that when we have the proper size government and governments function in the proper manner, we certainly wouldn't need the IRS or the 16th Amendment.
If you were president, would you work to phase out the IRS?
Immediately.
That's what they call a softball.
And you can only do that if you change our ideas about what the role of government ought to be. If you think the government has to take care of us from cradle to grave, and if you think our government should police the world and spend hundreds of billions of dollars on a foreign policy that we cannot manage, you can't get rid of the IRS. But if you want to lower taxes, and if you don't want the government to quit printing the money to come up with shortfall and cause all the inflation, you have to change policy.
What if we realistically addressed the debt and paid attention to the huge burden we're placing on generations to come? Guess whose ideas these are? And you hardly ever hear his name. This is Republican candidate Ron Paul. Ron Paul, who raised more than $5 million in the third quarter.
Paul surprised the political world today, his campaign announcing he'd raised $5 million in the past 3 months.
Should more people be listening to what Ron Paul has to say?
He took Fed Chief Ben Bernanke to the woodshed and administered a relentless attack.
We do see risks to inflation, and we are taking those into account, and we want to make sure that prices remain as stable as possible in the United States.
But how can you do this and pursue this, the policy you have, without further weakening the dollar? There's a dollar crisis out there, and people's money is being stolen. People who have saved, they're being robbed. I mean, if you have a devaluation of the dollar at 10%, people have been robbed at 10%. But how can you pursue this policy without addressing the subject that somebody's losing their wealth because of a weaker dollar? And it's going to lead to higher interest rates and a weaker economy.
Seldom have I seen such a licking applied to a Fed chief, and I have been around a while. I see you grinning.
Rick Santelli, I'll go to you first because I understand they are fired up in the pits about Mr. Bernanke's testimony. Tell us.
I'll tell you what, Sue. A lot of people, and I don't mean this to be political, but when Ron Paul was firing every revolver in Ben Bernanke's direction, there was a lot of people cheering down here.
And Rachel, this candidate really is gaining quite a following.
1,500 people packed into the War Memorial Auditorium to see Paul speak.
Amazing, amazing numbers. The impressive numbers, in fact, attracting new attention to a candidate many had simply assumed was an extreme long shot.
It means his supporters dropped $4,380,000 in 24 hours. That's $182,500 per hour, $3,042 per second.
So who are these people who are giving you $4 million in one day?
I don't know. I haven't met them all. But there's a lot of them out there.
Who do you guess they are?
I believe they're very diverse. They're coming from all positions and all parts of the political spectrum.
Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul is finally getting some attention. So people are still getting to know you. You know, what's your best pitch? How do you tell people who you are?
Well, I'm a member of Congress. I've declared for the presidency in the Republican Party.
And I stand for liberty. I stand for non-interventionist foreign policy and bringing our troops home. And I want very limited government, maximum amount of freedom, and a lot of Americans love the idea.
Where do you see your chances as winning? Do you see your chances as winning, or?
The fundraising is growing exponentially, and the message is powerful. You know, I have my shortcomings, but the message has no shortcomings. The message of liberty is what America is all about, and the more people hear about this, and the more they understand the financial trouble we're in, the trouble the dollar is in, and the failure of our foreign policy, all of a sudden this has gotten so popular, way beyond what I had conceived. And so I would say, yes, there probably is a risk I could win.
Now, would that